Okay, we are continuing on from the ventricles. So I wanted to again show you where things are to kind of always orient yourself. And the front part of the frontal cortex is again missing. But here we have, here's the fissure, the longitudinal fissure going down the center of the brain. Here's the left temporal lobe, here's the right temporal lobe, and right here is the brainstem where we looked at all the cranial nerves. So I'm going to take off this top cortex. This is mostly parietal lobe, a little frontal lobe. All right. Notice underneath there's another little island of cortex underneath that you don't see from the outside of the brain, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, since we're going to kind of follow along with your notes, this is that corpus callosum. And the fibers are running this way. So it looks like it goes this way, but really the fibers are running this way, connecting the two hemispheres. They just couldn't put those in because they want you to be able to take it out. Here's the ventricles that we just talked about. So this is the two lateral ventricles with the posterior horn, the anterior horn. All right. So we're going to pull all this cortex off now. And this is what we're going to look at. But this is, again, here's where the ventricles are sitting. This is the lateral ventricles. The third ventricle is in the middle between them, and then this is the fourth ventricle back here. All right? So this is the cortex we just pulled off. These are the temporal lobes here, and this is a little bit of the occipital lobe back here. But we've gone deep into the cortex, and we are looking for the fornix. So this kind of structure coming out, just kind of, there's a little bit of another structure we're going to talk about in a minute called the choroid plexus on it, but this structure that kind of is like a, I don't know what, a snake, or it's a little, this half circular shape, that is the fornix, okay? Coming over here too. That is the same structure that we saw here. So last week we looked and we said, here's the corpus callosum on top, and this white kind of half circle underneath, that's the fornix. So it looks kind of like that same shape, fornix. All right. Then we have the choroid plexus, and the choroid plexus you can tell by the colors here. So it's that red, this whole red kind of stripe that comes up here, and it's worn off, but it actually comes up here too. All right, so there's choroid plexus on both sides. It's everything that you see that's red, and that's a part of the brain that filters from the blood that's going towards the brain. It filters out kind of like plasma. It gets rid of all the white blood cells and various bigger things, and it creates the cerebral spinal fluid. So this is right by the ventricles, right? The ventricles are sitting in here, and the ventricles are full of the cerebral spinal fluid. So we'll talk about the choroid plexus in class, but you can kind of be aware of where it is. It's that red structure. All right, then the hippocampus is going to be, so you kind of, this structure here is the fornix that kind of is white and red, has the choroid plexus part there too. This pea green structure here running all around here and up. So most of this pea green structure here is the hippocampus. So you kind of see it's going down there and on this side too, right? Kind of this part right here, hippocampus going up all the way here. All right, and that is going to be important for memory especially. This is one of the areas they find that is deteriorating in people who have Alzheimer's. So it's very important for memory. All right, next we're going to look at the cerebellum. So remember, the cerebellum is that little part in the back of the brain normally. It's sitting back here, all right? And we've pulled it out here. And there's going to be three structures. They also call these like cerebellar hemisphere. It's just like they called the cerebral hemispheres was the front part, and this is the cerebellar hemispheres, part of the cerebellum. The vermis is going to be the midline. So when you look here and you kind of see a structure going this way, it's like right down the center. I don't know how well you can see it. You can kind of see it right there. That's the vermis, all right? So it's kind of basically the midline. Then there's two more terms you have to know. The tonsils are these guys right here. You see there's kind of bumps here, and there's a bump here. That is the tonsils, all right? And then we'll face it this way so you can see. So here's the tonsils again. They're kind of these pretty large bumps right here next to the cerebral hemispheres. Then if you look up higher, up here, you're gonna see another little bump right over here. I'll kind of outline it. This is the bump right here. This bump. All right, we'll bring it up close. It's that little bump right in there, little part. All right, and then over here, it's right here. Kind of outline it again, this part right here. That's the flocculus, okay? So it's another little, much teenier bump on the cerebellum. All right, then we will talk about structures here. All right, so this was that part. Here's where the cranial nerves come out. This is the dorsal part. Here, this is that cortex that I said we pulled off all the big cerebral cortex, and there's still some stuff that looks like cortex underneath. This is the islands of Ryle, R-E-I-L, and we have a right one. We'll just pull it right off. And we have a left one that we will pull off. And you don't need to tell the difference between the two of them. That's hard. All right, now we're going to this structure here, really. This whole thing, I'll pull it out, is called the basal ganglia. We'll talk about this in class. You can see how I can kind of pull it right out of there. This whole structure is called the basal ganglia, and maybe some more structures with it, so we'll talk about that in class. Also, this really what you can call, definitely this whole structure is called the corpus striatum. All right, there's a little inconsistency in how some of these things are labeled, and we'll talk about that in lecture. But for right now, think of this whole thing as the corpus striatum, and it's made up of 3 parts. All right, and we'll look on the other side too. It looks a little bit different over here. All right, so over here, oops, oh, it's underneath here, that's right. All right, so we'll pull this out. Here. All right. So they've kind of showed it differently on the 2 sides. This part of, so you can kind of see this is kind of the same structure here, but here you're just seeing part of it, all right? This part of it, which looks like this, is called the caudate nucleus. And remember, caudate means a tail, so the idea is it looks like a big tail, all right? So on this structure, it's this top part again. It's that tail part, this whole thing. That's the caudate nucleus. All right. Then inside, there's kind of this circular, like a, nut or something, like a walnut or an almond shape. That's what it is. And then in this one, you can see it very clearly because it's this. So I'll try to stick it back in there. All right. So this is how it sits. That is the lentiform nucleus, or lenticular nucleus, sometimes it's called. Let's see, we called it the lentiform nucleus in your notes, lentiform nucleus, okay. This lentiform nucleus is then made up of 2 parts. So this lentiform nucleus is made up of the putamen, which is the more lateral side, the putamen. So this is sitting in your brain like this. Here's the caudate nucleus. This is together. The lenticular nucleus or lentiform nucleus is made up of the putamen on the lateral side and something called the pallidum or the globus pallidus. In your lab notes, I have pallidum. It's often called the globus pallidus, all right? And so here we see this is that little lentiform nucleus. It's very slippery. Okay, lentiform nucleus, and this is the darker red part is considered the pallidum or the globus pallidus, and here's the lighter red part. That's the putamen, okay? So globus pallidus here, which is more medial, and the more lateral side is the putamen. Okay, let's see, how much more do we have? Well, we'll try to go through it all. We'll see when we have to stop. All right, thalamus. The thalamus is... Here we have the 2 parts of the brain that were together, and we pulled out the ventricle in between them. And so the thalamus is this part, right? Remember, that's right in the middle. When you were looking on this brain, we said that this was the thalamus, kind of the egg shape right in the middle of the brain. All right. So here you can see a little better that the thalamus is kind of a quite large structure. So it's here, but then it also goes back here some. All right, but so that's still that kind of center part, that's the thalamus, and it kind of comes back here. All right. So in this structure you can kind of see here's some of the thalamus right here. It's a very big collection of nuclei. All right. Then the olives. I'm going to put these guys together again because you'll be able to see better where things are. All right, so here's the ventral part of the brain where all the cranial nerves are. All right, the olives, if you look close, there's some peach-colored, kind of orangey-colored area right here on the ventral part of the brain. Those are the olives, okay? Right next to them, more medially, are these are the pyramids. That's where those pyramidal pathways, your cortical spinal cord tracks go right through here. These are the pyramids. This is where they cross. So it's kind of a white, almost a white colored, my fingers are going right over them now, right in the middle. All right, those are the pyramids. Turn it around and we have the nucleus, the tubercle of the nucleus gracilis is right here. And then this is kind of the track. It's the most medial one of the nucleus gracilis. And next to it is the tubercle of the nucleus cuneatus, and that goes down here. And I'll show you a picture of that because I think these models, it's a little hard to tell on these models, all right, to see those very clearly. So here we have, hopefully that can kind of focus on them, all right. This in the middle, this is the tubercle of the nucleus gracilis, and that tract goes down in the middle. And then right lateral to it, that's the tract of right here on this side, here's the tubercle of the nucleus cuneatus, and that goes down there. Okay, and those are pretty hard to label. I don't think we'll be able to label them on the quiz next week.